Honourable Member, Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, sir. I am very proud to be associated with this government. I'll be proud tomorrow to vote for it, and I am proudly promoting it in the Hamilton West electorate. Sir, there have been some very fine contributions to this debate from members on this side of the House, including from members of our supply and confidence partners. And I thank them for highlighting the important aspects of a budget that is delivering in areas that matter to New Zealanders. Sir, this is a government that is getting the job done. Nearly 6 years ago, New Zealanders voted for change. The recession was already biting. The previous government had squandered the best economic conditions of a generation. They were spending like drunken sailors without securing the revenue to fund their commitments. And they had encouraged an explosion in bureaucracy while overseeing a major decline in the delivery of public services. Treasury, sir, was predicting that the incoming government would face at least a decade of deficits. And so that is why New Zealanders voted for change. They knew that the next few years would be difficult, and they were prepared to back a government that promised to get its own finances under control while protecting the vulnerable from the sharp edges of the recession. And that's what we've done. One only needs to look at many of the countries with which we like to compare ourselves and those with which we trade to appreciate the staggering accomplishments of the John Key-led administration, and especially our excellent Minister of Finance, the Honourable Bill English. The United Kingdom, the United States of America, Spain, Portugal, Greece, India, the list goes on. And as we saw last week, now the pain and the cuts are really biting across the Tasman as the new Australian government attempts to rescue that country from the ravages and the irresponsibility of the former Labor Greens government. What a grim warning that is to all New Zealanders not to put it all at risk on this side of the Tasman when they go to the polls on the 20th of September this year. Earlier this evening, Mr Speaker, I heard some of the Honourable Nick Smith's contribution to this debate. He quite rightly made the point that New Zealand's level of debt would have reached bankruptcy levels if the former Labor government's reckless fiscal mismanagement had continued beyond 2008. And so I say to the member for Dunedin North, who barracks across the House regularly about this government's economic record, that he knows, and more importantly his constituents know in Dunedin North, that this government has rescued the country and its finances from the worst Labor government they've ever seen. I am very proud of our achievements, sir, in getting the books back into surplus within 5 years, not least because the previous government delighted in spending all the money that they had and plenty that they didn't have when it was clear that they were headed for electoral oblivion. Achieving that feat in half the time that Treasury predicted to the incoming government that it would take was commendable in itself. But given that no one knew then what devastation lay ahead for the people of Canterbury and the city of Christchurch, it is nothing short of remarkable. As others have noted in this debate, getting back into surplus is important because it gives the government and New Zealanders generally choices. It means that we can start planning for future debt repayments and contributions to the superannuation fund. I and others on this side of the House are determined to achieve both of those goals in order to ensure that our children and their children are not saddled with an impossible burden which would encourage many who could to leave our shores and cause living standards to plummet for those who would have to stay behind. It has been utterly disingenuous to hear members opposite in this debate crying crocodile tears about our country's indebtedness during this debate, while every reasonable person knows that those same members who were here during the 9 long years of the Clark administration are responsible for it. Had the voters not intervened as decisively as they did in 2008, the debt projections now would be astronomical. So, in the critical areas of managing the Crown's finances, this is a government that is getting the job done. That's right. And when it comes to delivering better public services, which is a major responsibility of any government and one of the clear priorities of this one, with some demanding targets having been set and met right across the board, again, we are getting the job done. In the time remaining, sir, I want to focus on some recent announcements that have been warmly welcomed in Hamilton and elsewhere, I'm sure. Prior to Budget Day, we heard about the terrific initiatives to deal with this worrying problem of rheumatic fever, because this is an issue that we thought had been dealt with a generation ago, and now it has come back. It is striking at communities right around the country. We have to deal with it, and we've put measures in place to ensure that it can be. So we have seen the new measures for children who need cochlear implants. And again, this is something that for those living in the deaf community is a measure they've been calling for a long time. And because of our responsible fiscal management, we are now in a position to deal with it. And I look forward to seeing people in my area and elsewhere being able to take advantage of this terrific initiative. These were the things, sir, that people were talking to me about when I was in Rotorua a couple of weeks ago and last weekend in Hamilton at the Women's Expos. It's the sort of thing that matters to families. And so, of course, the next thing is to look at how the budget delivered for our families and our children. And I was pleased to hear Barbara Stewart, my colleague from the Waikato region, acknowledging the importance of the free doctors' visits for children under 13. I'm sure that this is something that is warmly welcomed across the House. I'm sure that we're all pleased to see that it's being delivered. But, sir, it's part of a $500 million package of measures to support children and families, where $90 million of that is being spent on those free doctors' visits. $171.8 million, sir, will be allocated to increase paid parental leave to 18 weeks by 2016. We've heard a lot about that issue in recent times. I'm proud to be a part of a government that is delivering on it. There's the $42.3 million measure to increase the parental tax credit. That was something introduced by National back in 1999. It helps families with newborn children who are not on a benefit and who are not receiving paid parental leave. And to the member who's chirping at the moment, I'd remind her that many of those people are the ones who used to be called Mike Moore's battlers, the Kiwi battlers, and the Labour Party fought for them, but they don't anymore. Now it's National that's delivering. Sir, there's a substantial increase to early childhood education. We are seeing results with far more children being enrolled in early childhood education. That will benefit them for a lifetime. I'm proud we're delivering. We've more than doubled expenditure on early childhood education while we've been in office. And as the Minister for Social Development talked about earlier this evening, that vital $33 million package to help vulnerable children, including 8 new children's teams around the country. I hope and expect to see something in the Waikato to identify and work with our at-risk children. Sir, we are getting the job done in really important ways. Could I close just by saying, paying a tribute to budgetary advisory services right around the country. In Hamilton, the Budgetary Advisory Trust is one of those budgeting services doing tremendous work, as my colleague Dr. Calder is noting, with financially vulnerable members of our community. I meet regularly with that wonderful team in my city of Hamilton. I'm full of admiration for the work they do. It's practical, it's compassionate, it is making a real difference for families. It is, as Dr. Calder says, it's effective. Sir, there's so much more I would like to see, I'd like to be able to speak about, but I'm pleased with that $22 million package for the budgetary services. I'm proud of this budget. I return to my theme. This is a government that is getting the job done, and I'll be proud to campaign on it right through to the 20th of September.
Just before I call the next speaker, this is to advise the House that this is a split call.